Okay, so we're going to go over the notes now, and you also should have handy your little book that we made in the previous video. If you don't have your little book all handy and all filled out, you should go back and watch that video and fill it out. Okay, as usual, I'm going to go pretty quickly through these notes. You should pause and rewind the video as you need to so you get all the information. First, we have an angle here, and I want to name some parts of the angles. We've already talked about this point right here is the vertex. And it's made up of two rays, BA and BC. And we can use an angle to divide a space into basically three parts. Remember that these rays really go on forever and ever in both directions. So really, this is not just this small angle. Really, these are rays, so they're really going on forever. So what we have is we have the exterior of the angle. Exterior means outside. We use that word a lot in geometry. So remember, exterior, that's outside. This is the interior, or inside. And then we can talk about things that are on the angle. If it's a point like this, like point A is on the angle. Now we're going to talk about some symbols and vocabulary you need to know. We already talked about in the little book that this sign means congruent, and congruent means same size and same shape. We've already talked about that before this year. And now we're going to do two new ones that you probably should know from algebra, but if not, we're going to review them. This symbol here, which is an upside down capital T, means perpendicular. I think it might be hard to see my pencil there, so I'm going to go over it with a pen. That symbol, it's an upside down capital T, it means perpendicular. And two things that are perpendicular cross at 90-degree angles. If I want to say parallel, I use two slanted lines that are parallel to each other. That means parallel. And two lines that are parallel are coplanar and do not cross. That's a typo. Two lines. Okay. Now, so what I might say is AB, line AB, is perpendicular to line CD. Or I could write this like AB, line AB, is parallel to line CD. That's how you're going to see it in problems. And then we talked about this in the little book as well. If I put M, angle ABC, that means the measure of angle ABC. I often see students that get confused and they think they're multiplying times M or something, but that's just indicating that I'm talking about what number goes with angle ABC. Is it 90 degrees? Is it 60 degrees? That's what we're indicating, that we're looking for the number that's the degrees of that angle. Alright, so let's work some problems. So PQS, and if you have trouble with these, trace it with your finger. PQS. That's this angle here that I've marked in red. And we know that one is 77. So you want to always put your numbers on your picture. So I like to do it like this to show that it's the whole thing that's 77 there. And then PQR, again, trace it with your finger or colored pencil or something. PQR, that's this small one on this side here. That one is 32. So the first thing I want to talk about on each one of these problems is which kind of angle out of our book are we talking about? Well, we're talking about angle addition postulate, where I have two adjacent angles, and I know that these two small ones add up to the big one. So what does this one have to be? Well, this is just like when we did segment addition. I'm going to need to subtract these to find this one here. So I'm going to do 77 minus 32, and I'm going to get 45 degrees. And what we're saying is that this angle right here is 45 degrees. If I add the two small ones, I get the big one. Alright, our next one says that it's an angle bisector. Remember what that says? That means we put it in our notebook. An angle bisector cuts it into two equal parts. So what I know here is that this is the angle bisector, and it's cutting this and this into two equal parts. So now when I go on to the rest of my problem, I know that WXZ, that's this side here. This side here is 42 degrees. And then it says find YXZ. xz, that's this one here. Well, we said that this is cutting it into 2 equal parts, so what does this have to be? It has to be 42 degrees. So the measure of angle yxz is 42 degrees. That's what it asked me. Then it asked me what's the measure of angle yxw. yxw, that's the whole thing. So it's now asking me what's this whole thing. That's again angle addition, where if I know each of the small ones, I can find the big one. So I need to just add these up. 42 plus 42 means this is 84 degrees. All right, and our third one on this row. FG bisects EFH. So this part right here is cutting this angle into 2 equal parts. That means this part is congruent or equal to this part here. Then it says if IFE, this one right here, is 82 degrees, that's this one right here, find these other values. So I'm going to write these down. Measure of angle EFG, measure of angle EFH, and measure of angle HFG. And again, trace these with your finger if it helps. EFG, that's this one here. Well, what I do know is this makes a straight line, and if it makes a straight line, it means it adds up to 180. And I know these two things are equal, but I don't know what they are. So what do we call something we don't know what it is? How about we call it x? If I call that one x, and I know this one is the same thing, can I also call this one x? So what I know here is that if I take 180, has to equal this plus this plus this. So I'm going to write it down here. 180 equals 82 plus x plus x. So that means 180 equals 82 plus 2x. Now how do we solve this? Minus 82. That cancels. And we get 98 degrees equals 2x. So x equals 49 degrees. So this one has to be 49, and this one has to be 49. So let's see what we know now. EFG, that was the one I marked in green earlier, that's 49. And EFH, oh, that's the big one. What's the big one here? Well, that's 49 plus 49 is 98. And HFG, that's this one, 49. You really have to put all these numbers on your picture. If you try to do it in your head, you're going to mess that up. Okay, the next one. Here we know VZY is 60 degrees. And we know VZT is 50 degrees. Now what else can I figure out on my picture? Before I even start looking at what it's looking for there, let's think of what we have. This picture here looks very much like my vertical angles. And remember, vertical angles are ones that are across from each other. Get it where you can see it. So this angle and this angle are vertical angles. This one and this one are vertical angles, which tells me that they're congruent. So if this one's 60, this one here is also 60. I also in this problem know that those three right there make a straight line. So if they're a straight line, what do they add up to? They have to add up to 180. So I could do 180 equals, and I'm looking at these on this side of the line, 50 plus x plus 60. That's these right here. 50 plus x plus 60 has to add up to 180. So I've got 180 equals 110 plus x minus the 110. 70 equals x. Hey, that one has to be 70. Now that I have it filled in, I can go back and look at what they were asking me for. I know the measure of angle YZW and the measure of angle TZX. YZW. YZW. Oh, that's the one on this side. They got all tricky on me. Well, I can find this a couple of ways. One, I know those two have to add up to 180, so I can do 180 minus 60 gives me 120. Or I could say, this whole thing here is a vertical angle with this whole thing here, and that whole thing has to be 120, so this whole thing has to be 120. Then they also asked me for TZX. TZX, that's this one right here that we already wrote in. That's 70. Alright, find the angles. This one, they didn't give us words, they gave us just a picture, and you have to remember what this and what this means. When they show this symbol like this on both of this, that means that those are equal to each other. So let's kind of go through things we know. Can I immediately go to what's angle C? Well, I can't because I don't know that yet. So you need to work on the parts that you do know. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. What I do know is this number right here. Well, if I know this number right here, I also know this one right here. Those two are vertical angles. So those two have to be congruent. So this one has to be 112. Then these symbols here and here tell me that those two are the same, so this one has to be 112. Then I know this one here and this one here are vertical angles. So what do we know about those? They're congruent, so this one has to be 112. Now how am I going to find these other ones? Well, those add up to 180, so I can just do 180 minus 112 to get the missing one right here, this one. I can do 180 minus 112, and that adds up to 68. So this one has to be 68. I could find this one the same way by saying those are 180 minus 112 is 68. Or I could say these two are vertical angles, so they have to be equal to each other. Now that I have everything on my picture, and you should really do it this order, put everything on your picture, then fill in the blanks up there. 68, B is 112, and C is 68. Alright, and our final one. This one is another one where it's really easiest to fill everything in your picture first, then go back and fill in the blanks. So notice that these have two spots on them. That just means that those go together. So I would start and I'd say, well, what do I know? I know this one is 70. So I'd also know this one, those two are vertical angles, so this one has to be 70. I know this one's 40. So I know its vertical angle, which is this one right here, also has to be 40. I don't have any other numbers on there to work with to make a vertical angle, but if I look at this half, I can come pretty close. That's got to equal how much? It's got to equal 180 if it's a straight line. And I know that this one is equal to that one. So we're going to use the same trick we did on this one above here. I'm going to say, well, I don't know what those are, but I do know that they're equal to each other, so let's call them both x. So I'm going to do, on this side of the line right here, 180 equals x plus 40 plus 70 plus x. So now I'm going to do some algebra, combine like terms on this side of the line, 2x plus 110 minus 110. 70 equals 2x, divide by 2, and you get x equals 35. So this one has to be 35, and this one has to be 35. Now by vertical angles, these two are vertical angles, so this has to be 35. And vertical angles, these two are vertical angles, so that has to be 35. So now I've got everything here on my picture filled in. Now I'm going to fill in my blanks. 35, 40, C is 35, and D is 70. Okay, that's it for part 1. We'll do part 2 in a minute.